Hey all, traffic analysis is a really important part of the due diligence process, and you need to be analyzing it by several different cuts and dimensions to really understand the risks and opportunities that are associated with a potential acquisition to help you build your investment thesis. So I'm going to be running through in this next group of videos all of those different levels of analysis that you should be doing, starting with a high-level overview of traffic by channel, how to look at it, and some of the questions that it helps sets up for further diligence. Now, ideally, you're getting first-party data here from the seller straight from their Google Analytics or whatever their web analytics platform is to really understand all of the very specific data on where traffic is coming from. Now, if the seller's a little hesitant to give you that first-party data right now, then you can use some third-party tools to get a semi-good gauge of what traffic looks like in different channels to help you set up some additional questions to ask. And ideally, you're getting that first-party data at some point, ideally pre-LOI, but sometimes there are going to be instances where the seller is just super hesitant. Maybe you are a direct competitor of them. Obviously, you'll be signing an NDA really early on in the process if they're giving you access to anything. But there are some other solutions to getting to that first party data as well, which I'll cover some of those in a different video. But you can do stuff like video walkthroughs with them. They can share screenshots, specific downloads to reports, things like that they may be comfortable with early on in the diligence process. But so ideally first party data, but I'm going to run through just a quick tool that you can use to look at traffic by channel using a third party tool. And like I said, set up some of those additional questions that you need to ask. So let me just jump into my screen here and we'll get started. All right, so we're going to be using the SEMrush Traffic Analytics report for this example. I think this is a decent tool to use to get a semi-good gauge of traffic by channel that, like I said, sets up those additional questions that you need to ask in order to build your due diligence and investment thesis and really understand the risks and opportunities associated with the potential acquisition. We're going to be using the points guy as an example in this video. This is a site that is owned by a company called Red Ventures. They're a large media holding company, and this site was actually one that I was on the due diligence team for when I worked there when they acquired the site several years ago. So I think it's a decent example because there is a good amount of channel diversity, and it sets up some further questions that we asked during the due diligence process and eventually got access to with first-party data. But a lot of analysis that you can do here to really help you build your investment thesis and give you the insights that you need to identify opportunities within the business. So right here, we just plug it in the pointsguy.com, and then if you scroll down, you'll see trends by device for the last 6 months as default, but you can look at the past year as well as all of the data that SEMrush has. Ideally, you're looking at traffic by channel and by device for as many years as you can get to really identify longer term trends and any potential risks in terms of spikes, valleys, and just overall consistency between those different channel breakouts. But what we're really interested in for this analysis is traffic sources by type here, which you can also get to by just clicking on this traffic journey tab. So this gives us a breakdown of all of the different traffic sources that are sending clicks to the points guy. It's really with your basic traffic breakouts of direct channel, referral, organic search, and then social and paid. So as you can see, direct based on SEMrush's estimates makes up almost half of the traffic that comes into the points guy. Now, this can be an inflated estimation, which I typically find is the case with these SEMrush traffic analytics reports, but it's certainly a big chunk of what these tools are saying, and so it's important to verify that data that you get from third-party tools with a seller. So do these channels actually make up a significant portion of the traffic, and how much business value is actually coming from these different channels? So does 48% of the traffic that comes to the points guy actually come from folks who are either typing the site directly into the address bar, or I actually think a better term for the direct bucket is dark traffic. since there's just a lot of other sources that are within this bucket that just don't have a refer associated with them. So oftentimes it can be throwaway traffic, but it can also be, in many cases, really relevant users that do add a lot of business value and are revenue generating for the whatever site that you're looking at. So actually just acquired a different site last year in 2022 where they did about 2 million-ish direct visits a month, and most of that was actually people that had the site bookmarked that were coming to it on a daily basis. So this can be a really valuable source of traffic, but something that needs to be analyzed further with first-party data. And like I said, you can use these third-party tools to really set up additional questions that you have for the seller and really understand what makes up that bucket. Similarly, on referral traffic, you want to understand what are the biggest refers to this site that you're potentially acquiring. You can see here for the Points Guy, it's only about 3% of total traffic, but roughly almost a 250,000 visitors a month in terms of referrals from other sources. And you can see social is a pretty similar amount. So one, you want to verify that obviously with the seller, like I said, but you also want to look at what are those top referring sources, what platforms are those coming from? Again, is there a ton of business value and revenue generating events that are associated with traffic from those channels, or is it really just the community coming back and forth to the site? And then additionally, what sort of resources do you need to have on the business post-acquisition in order to keep the lights on or continue growing those different channels if they do have a lot of business value and are important to continue to staff post-acquisition? So important, I think, for team planning as well, and something that needs to be part of your investment thesis and why it's important to potentially identify those risks and opportunities during the diligence process. You can look at some specific sources in this traffic analytics report from SEMrush just by looking at this traffic journey chart here. There's also a chart below that gives you some of these top referring sources as well to really understand, where's this traffic coming from? Is it a Facebook group that sends a lot of links out and a lot of refers over to the site? In this case, specific case with the Points Guy, there is a pretty good community around that sends a lot of traffic from Facebook. Are they posting in Reddit a lot? Are they posting in a lot of other communities that their content gets picked up in quite often that needs to be accounted for from a resourcing perspective, and something that obviously adds to the traffic base and potentially just the overall bottom line and the amount of business value that's generated from these channels. And there's also a flip side to this traffic by channel analysis, right? So you want to identify where a lot of that traffic is coming from today. But if you're already in the category or niche, or you just have done a lot of research and understand where there's a lot of potential opportunity in terms of traffic and revenue capture, are there any potential channels that are surprisingly low in terms of the amount of traffic that's coming to the site? Are there potential opportunities for you to insert your expertise from your internal team, your capabilities to really scale a traffic segment that seems to be a really great opportunity within that category or niche that this site is not taking advantage of today? So going back to some of our previous conversations around monetization leverage, content leverage, and just finding those initial opportunities within the business, looking at where you can potentially add a ton of value through channel growth and channel diversity can be a really important part of your investment thesis. So I'll have more videos covering all of these individual channels and how to analyze traffic within each of these buckets, but this is just a good overview of traffic by channel and some of the additional questions that it sets up during the due diligence process. So stay tuned for those other videos, and I'll see you in the next one.